Tonight, pandemic law fury. Protesters condemned over a grim gallows stunt. As Daniel Andrews is forced to backtrack. Masks set to go. Pandemic restrictions to be scrapped early. A shock development. Police investigative William Tyrrell fell from a balcony. Nick Kyrgios calls for the Australian Open to be axed. And a seafood price plunge hitting rock bottom for Christmas.
Live from Melbourne, 7 News with Peter Mitchell starts now.
Good evening. Police are on alert at Parliament House tonight after a day of protests over controversial new pandemic laws being debated right now. The laws have been watered down in an 11th-hour deal, but critics say the changes don't go far enough. And protesters are under fire over a grim gallows stunt.
A disturbing display on the steps of Parliament as protesters laugh at the idea of hanging the Premier. Hundreds gathered late into the night, joining protesters who've been maintaining a 24-hour presence, demanding pandemic laws be scrapped. Police kept a close eye on the crowd, guarding the doors to Parliament, where inside the state government held last-minute talks with crossbenchers, agreeing to 7 amendments to the pandemic legislation.
The bill is filled with safeguards, oversight mechanisms that far exceed any other state, I think, perhaps any other country.
Nothing has changed. The amendments last night seek to put a little bit more power in the hands of the Scrutiny of Acts and Regulations Committee, which is government controlled.
The changes include halving fines for not complying with a pandemic order, ensuring the Premier has reasonable grounds to declare a pandemic, revealing the health advice behind decisions within 7 days, and only applying pandemic orders to characteristics such as age based on the health risk.
But it doesn't go far enough in relation to a number of key areas, including independent oversight and scrutiny.
3 key crossbenchers negotiated the changes.
And as a result, we have legislation that is accountable, that is transparent.
We weren't able to get everything that we asked for in the negotiations. We are concerned about the detention review capacity and the need for external detention.
All received death threats and abuse they say the state government could have helped prevent.
They should have been on the front foot. They should have been getting out these positive messages, because if they had, perhaps we would not have seen a full-size, working, functioning gallows towed past the front of Parliament last night with an inflatable effigy of the Premier hung by the neck.
As the pandemic law divides public and Parliament.
Again, there's nothing arbitrary about these powers. And you can laugh, oh, it's a joke now. It's a joke. It's the worst thing ever, but now it's a joke. The leader of the opposition, leader of the opposition is playing rank politics.
The opposition is accused of fanning the flames by standing side by side with protesters.
If you go to those rallies and you don't call that out, you are aiding and abetting that type of violence.
Matthew Guy, leader of the Victorian Liberal Party, must publicly admonish the members of his party who, by appearing at these rallies, have legitimised the noose carriers.
I don't support anything that's off a far right, far left or far anything element. I support sensible dialogue. I've said it all week. I can't say it any stronger.
And Chanel Vella, the new bill is set to be debated well into the night.
It certainly will be. It's a long night for the upper house. That debate could run well past midnight, even though this legislation is pretty much a done deal, given it has that cross-bench support. As for when the legislation will actually pass, that's more likely to happen on Thursday or Friday, Mitch.
Chanel Vella at State Parliament, thank you. The Kill the Bill protesters are vowing to stay on the steps of Parliament House until the pandemic laws are put on hold. Security experts say there are worrying signs in the protests.
It's a horrifying sight we'd never thought we'd see in Melbourne. a sickening taunt repeated on the steps today.
I look forward to the day I get to see you dance on the end of a rope, you evil little bastard.
It is a small minority of the crowd here, but experts are concerned.
There is the potential for violence in amongst this. Some of the images, the iconography, harks back to the January 6 protests, insurrection at the Capitol in Washington, D.C., and that's a worrying connection.
On the far right, as a separate issue, it's not a matter of me being worried about it, it's a matter of Victoria Police being worried about it.
By bizarre contrast, at times, a party atmosphere today. Most protesters have genuine concerns about mandated vaccines and the pandemic legislation.
Even with the few amendments, it's still a dangerous bill. It's just like a crazy amount that is not necessary.
But as we discovered, they can turn very quickly.
Where have you been? Where have you been, you coward?
We left under a barrage of abuse and threats. The opposition distances itself from extremist elements.
Some of the scenes we saw last night are ridiculous. Of course we condemn them.
But Liberal MP Craig Ondarchie joined the protesters today, calling them wonderful. Experts fear elements of the far right have infiltrated the protest.
There are certainly some elements there that are very concerning.
Nick McCallum, 7 News.
More COVID restrictions could ease within days as Victoria powers to vaccine targets. Estelle Griepink has the latest, and Estelle, the Premier dropped a big hint today.
Mitch, we're expecting an announcement as early as Thursday as we continue to head for our 90% double vaccination target. Today, the Premier said that there'll be very few rules left once we hit that milestone around Monday, and we'll pretty much be able to do away with masks.
Just to remind people, that means we go down to masks in very sensitive settings only, so for instance like public transport, hospitals, things of that, aged care, things of that nature. So no masks in the office, which will be very important in terms of getting people back into the office.
And in other good news, our case numbers continue trending down. Today we recorded just under 800 new cases, and that is our lowest number since September 27. Mitch?
Estelle Griepink by the Yarra, thank you. Police investigating the disappearance of William Tyrrell are now investigating a new theory, that he may have fallen from a balcony. The search for clues has returned to the home of his foster grandmother, where he was last seen alive.
For 7 years, police have gone over so much old ground. This is new ground. On the morning of September 12, 2014, a happy William Tyrrell was playing here at 48 Benaroon Drive, and beneath this balcony today, a forensic dig. Police sifted through the soil of a garden bed looking for a tooth, clothing, hair, any indication to support a theory William Tyrrell was not snatched, that he fell to his death. Officers in forensic suits also climbed in and out of the home's ceiling cavity.
There is certainly one person in particular that we are looking closely at.
The balcony theory has focused Strikeforce Roseanne's attention on William's foster mother, who initially reported seeing cars she did not recognise in the street the morning William disappeared.
Every single option has to be investigated. Every single scenario needs to be reviewed and then tested.
And that's what they're doing here and on Cobb & Co Road, an isolated track a kilometre away. The RFS is clearing vegetation and excavators are on site, and so is a hydrologist who helped recover the body of Brisbane teenager Daniel Morecambe. Investigators are hopeful this is where they will find William.
As bullish as police are on the direction this investigation is heading and the momentum it's now gathering, ultimately this exposes terrible flaws from the investigation early on. It's been 2,622 days since William Tyrrell went missing, and today is the first day this garden bed is being searched.
Police will not comment on an apprehended violence order taken out against William's foster parents on behalf of a child we cannot identify. The matter will be heard in court next week. In Kendall, Robert Ovadia, 7 News.
Two Demons fans jailed after sneaking into WA to watch the AFL Grand Final will plead guilty to charges in the Northern Territory. Hayden Burbank and Mark Babbage are currently serving 3 months jail in Perth. They'll be allowed to return to Melbourne when they're released in late December before appearing via video link in a Darwin court in February. The pair is accused of creating fake documents to breach border rules. The inquest into 50 deaths at St Basil's nursing home has heard more damning evidence about how the COVID outbreak began. And for the first time, the staff member who brought the virus into the home is telling her side of the story.
Mary Fraser was sent to St Basil's Aged Care to assess infection control practices. She was meant to speak with staff and watch them put on PPE. Instead, she only talked to management. Today, admitting we were accepting management's assertion that staff knew the sequences. Among those to hear her evidence on the second day of a coronial inquest, Clary Lutus, whose mother Philia died of dehydration and malnutrition inside St Basil's.
Lazy systems, ticking the boxes isn't good enough. Taking someone's word for it when you're assessing them about someone's livelihood and well-being, I don't think it's good enough.
The court also heard how COVID was able to seep in and kill 45 elderly residents. The Index case, a personal care worker, says she worked the same day she and family members underwent COVID tests. She contacted a superior when her husband and brother-in-law was symptomatic with discomfort in their throats, but was told to continue to work because she was asymptomatic. The woman, whose identity is suppressed, only agreed to give evidence under the protection of the court. It means anything she says cannot be used against her in any future court proceedings. Her evidence continues tomorrow. Jodie Lee, 7 News.
There's good news for workers, with the Reserve Bank predicting a wage rise as Australia moves out of the pandemic. It will be a welcome boost for Victorians battling soaring living expenses.
Not warrant. His delivery typically understated, but for homeowners, Reserve Bank Governor Phil Lowe's message will ring loudly.
It is still plausible that the first increase in the cash rate will not be before 2024.
That's record low interest rates for another 2 years. And despite inflation rising in the US and Europe and some prices soaring during the pandemic, like fuel,
petrol prices over the past year are up 24%.
Dr Lowe says Australia's inflation rate is expected to remain contained at around 2%.
Prices aren't likely to keep rising at current rates as conditions normalise.
Predicting wages to grow by 2.5% next year and 3% in 2023, with unemployment falling to just 4%.
The last time the unemployment rate was lower than this was in the early 1970s.
We've created one of the most exceptional economic results in the world when it comes to managing COVID.
And after Scott Morrison echoed John Howard's questionable mantra yesterday that prices and interest rates would always be lower under the coalition, today Labor hit back hard.
The liar from the Shire is at it again, this time on petrol and interest rates.
Converting an internet hashtag into a political weapon.
The liar from the Shire, the liar from the Shire.
Playing the man, a taste of a down and dirty election campaign ahead. Mark Riley, 7 News.
Former Victorian Governor Sir James Gobbo has been farewelled at a state funeral. The current governor leading tributes at St Patrick's Cathedral.
Victoria will always be the richer for the endeavour, the compassion and the gentle and wise presence of the Honourable Sir James Gobbo.
Victoria's 25th governor from 1997 to 2000 died at the age of 90. Nick Kyrgios is calling for this summer's Australian Open to be cancelled. The tennis star says the Victorian government's vaccine stance is morally wrong and could backfire on the tournament.
He's one of the loudest voices in the sport.
Mate, there is music
playing in the crowd while we are playing.
Now Nick Kyrgios is calling for January's Australian Open to be cancelled.
I don't think the Oz Open should go ahead, in my opinion. Just for the people of Melbourne, like, you got to send a message.
I certainly don't want to have beef with Nick Kyrgios, but I actually couldn't follow the logic of the comment. We've had a long lockdown, so the Australian Open shouldn't proceed. I'm not sure I follow that. I think really the opposite applies.
The double-vaxxed 26-year-old is also backing tennis stars who refuse to get jabbed.
I just don't think it's right to just force anyone, yet an athlete, just, you can't come play here because you're not vaccinated. Like, I think there's other solutions around it.
The Andrews government says it won't let unvaccinated players compete.
The stance of the Australian government, the Victorian government, Tennis Australia, probably driving up vaccination rates amongst players around the world. I think Ben Rothenberger said we've probably done the tour a favour.
It's so morally wrong to force someone to get vaccinated.
Australian Open organisers have already been dealt a blow, with Roger Federer's coach revealing the Swiss superstar will miss January's Grand Slam because of a knee injury.
On Federer, he finds a way.
Tegan Dolling, 7 News.
A former Australian Test captain has made a bold call. Tim Watson, Michael Clarke believes changes are on the cards.
That's right, Mitch. He's dropped the bombshell on the eve of the Ashes. We'll also speak exclusively to Ricky Ponting as the triumphant World Cup winners touch down back home to quarantine on the Gold Coast. Also, an inside AFL exclusive as draft hopefuls team up with a trio of modern-day stars to get a taste of life in the AFL. And Mr. Young Melbourneian has just scored the F1 ride of his life. All the details in sport.
OK, Tim, we'll see you then. Police have launched a crackdown on the water. Next, jet ski and boat owners targeted in a Victorian first. Exclusive details coming up on 7 News. Also, see how a taxi driver turned hero in the Liverpool terror attack. Justin Bieber set to put on a marvel of a show in Melbourne. And later, seafood prices hitting rock bottom for Christmas. Also, First Nations fashion takes centre stage. All staff at the Essendon Football Club are in isolation tonight after CEO Xavier Campbell tested positive to COVID. The Bombers have reassured fans their football program will not be impacted. Mr Campbell is fully vaccinated and hasn't worked at the club's Tullamarine headquarters since last Wednesday. Water police will test boat users on Port Phillip Bay for drugs as well as alcohol for the first time this summer. Drivers who test positive could be fined more than $2,000 and have their licences cancelled.
Let's get you to blow into this.
Breath tests are common on the water, but now for the first time, water police are targeting drug use as well.
Just give you this applicator there and I'll get you those pink bits there. I'll get you to just wipe along your tongue if you could.
In a new major trial, water police have the power to stop and test boat operators for drugs as well as alcohol at ramps across Victoria.
The results have come back negative, as you can see there.
But if they don't, water police can suspend a driver's licence for 24 hours, stopping them from driving away.
Alcohol and illicit drugs are a big problem on our roads, so we're very keen to roll out a trial where we can start testing people on the water.
The biggest concern, drugs such as MDMA, cannabis and methamphetamine.
In the past decade, the alcohol and illicit drugs have contributed to about a third of drownings over the past decade.
Anyone who tests positive will have their marine licence cancelled for 3 months and face a fine of more than $2,000.
Water police won't just be looking for illicit drugs over summer. They'll also be out across the state doing regular safety checks and cracking down on jet ski hoons.
Jet skis are a large part of our work, especially at the top of the bay, St Kilda and Port Melbourne.
The operation will begin this weekend and will run until March.
The message is clear. Whilst we're seeing the trends on the roads for several years, you can now expect to be tested on the water or whilst you're operating a boat.
Cassie Zervos, 7 News.
Residents in the path of floodwaters bearing down on the central west of New South Wales are tonight defying orders to evacuate their homes. The Lachlan River continues to rise. Hundreds of Forbes locals have been urged to get to safety by 9:30, but are staying put, saying they'll take their chances. Britain's terror alert level has been elevated with the threat of another attack deemed highly likely. It comes after a hero taxi driver bravely prevented more lives being lost in a bombing outside Liverpool Hospital.
In the drop-off zone of a hospital treating women and babies, the taxi barely comes to a stop before exploding. The blast killing its passenger, a suicide bomber, but the driver, David Perry, remarkably stumbles out. As the car goes up in flames, he's comforted by a witness. Police say the attacker was 32-year-old Emad Al-Swalman, a Syrian refugee unknown to MI5 who made the device at home. That's where he ordered the taxi, asking to go to the hospital, arriving moments before the nation paused on Remembrance Sunday. Liverpool's cathedral packed with dignitaries and veterans just down the road.
We cannot at this time draw any connection with this, but it is a line of inquiry which we are pursuing.
Al-Swalman converted from Islam to Christianity when he arrived in the UK, helped by locals. 4 men were arrested during raids of several properties, but have since been released.
What yesterday showed, above all, is that the British people will never be cowed by terrorism. We will never give in to those who seek to divide us with senseless acts of violence.
This is Britain's second terror incident in a month. Popular MP Sir David Amess was stabbed to death in October. The country's threat level has officially been raised from substantial to severe, meaning another attack is highly likely. In Liverpool, Sarah Greenhalgh, 7 News.
Australia is on track to eliminate cervical cancer within the decade, becoming the first in the world to offer all women the option to collect their own sample. The groundbreaking test is already available to women over 30 who have never been tested before or who are more than 2 years overdue. It will become available to everyone from July next year. Justin Bieber is coming to Melbourne next year. Fans will have to wait 12 months though. The pop superstar Jane, we've had quite a grey old Tuesday.
Mitch, this stretch of winter-like weather has been with us for some time. For the past 5 days, our top temperature has been 15 degrees or less. This is cold for this time of year. The average is 22. In fact, this is our coldest November stretch since 1983. But today was the last day of that. Watch as temperatures move up from here. Tomorrow's pleasant, Thursday's above average. I'll show you how warm it's turning after sport. Mitch.
That sounds a bit better. Thank you, Jane. Australia Post has some good news for Christmas. Next, the latest on the parcel backlog. What you need to know is coming up on 7 News. Also, police swoop in drug raids across Melbourne's west. Historic talks between 2 global superpowers. And training children as young as 5 to protect themselves from predators. Is it going too far? Hundreds of cannabis crops have been seized in raids across Melbourne's west. Nearly 650 plants and about 10 kilograms of dried cannabis were discovered. A 55-year-old Point Cook woman has been charged with cultivating a commercial quantity of cannabis. The raids took place across 8 suburbs over the course of a week. Country road workers are stepping up their fight for a $1 an hour pay rise. They want one of the company's executives to be dropped from a Melbourne Fashion Week panel.
Fashion Week is about women, and so if Country Road doesn't respect women workers, they shouldn't be at Fashion Week.
Country Road says its offer is higher than the industry award. Australia Post has finally cleared its lockdown backlog just in time for the Christmas rush. But Victorians are being warned they still need to plan ahead to get their gifts delivered before December the 25th.
The Christmas rush has started. Inside the country's largest Australia Post site, 10,000 parcels are processed every hour.
This conveyor belt stretches half a kilometre. Each parcel scanned, then automatically propelled down a chute and sorted into suburbs.
As we get into our busy period, we'll be doing well over 2 million a day.
The company has faced serious challenges in recent months: limited flights, increased online shopping and positive cases shutting down facilities. But rapid antigen tests and these contact tracing armbands are helping them stay open, and they've finally cleared the backlog.
In the event of a case in the facility, we can rapidly determine who you've interacted with, make sure that we isolate those people.
If you're planning on shopping online for Christmas, you will still have to get in early. Purchases from Western Australia or the Northern Territory need to be ordered within 3 weeks. Ordering from anywhere else in Australia, you've got just under a month. Christmas cards and letters will need to be mailed before December 16. The deadline is also fast approaching to get letters off to Santa. Mailing them off by December 3 will allow enough time for him to send back a response. Most importantly, don't forget a return address. Christy Cooper, 7 News.
US President Joe Biden has staged a historic first meeting with Chinese counterpart Xi Jinping. The talks were held as the world's two most powerful economies tried to dilute months of rising tension.
Good morning to you, Mr. President, in Beijing.
With a smile and wave from the White House, the US president opened this carefully choreographed meeting of world superpowers.
I'm very happy to see my old friend.
It is a wary friendship at that, with fault lines felt across the planet and little room for missteps.
It seems to me our responsibility as leaders of China and the United States is to ensure that the competition between our countries does not veer into conflict, whether intended or unintended. Just simple, straightforward competition.
Competition and rivalry spanning military, technology, trade. As China builds up its military presence in the Pacific, President Biden's looking to strengthen and stand by alliances with Australia, Japan and India.
The United States is always going to stand up for our interests and values and those of our allies and partners.
Beyond the pleasantries, there's a gulf of distrust and disagreements. Those potential flashpoints kept behind closed doors tonight. China's human rights abuses and the future of Taiwan. President Biden privately telling President Xi the United States strongly opposes unilateral efforts to change the status quo or undermine peace and stability across the Taiwan Strait. In the United States, Ashley Mullaney, 7 News.
A senior aide to former US President Donald Trump has turned himself in to the FBI. Steve Bannon surrendered days after being indicted on 2 counts of contempt of Congress. He's accused of refusing to provide information to investigators about the January attack on the Capitol.
This is going to be the misdemeanor from hell for Merrick Garland, Nancy Pelosi, and Joe Biden. Joe Biden ordered Merrick Garland to prosecute me from the White House lawn when he got off Marine One.
Mr. Bannon says he's fighting for freedom of speech. And rescue workers are trying to reach hundreds of people trapped on a major highway in Canada. A huge storm is battering the country's Pacific Northwest, causing widespread flooding and triggering landslides and rockfalls. The disappearance of Cleo Smith in WA has sparked concern for the parents of young children. Some are now sending their sons and daughters to classes to learn how to recognise and protect themselves from dangerous people.
In this class, the louder you yell, the better. Saying no isn't rude and fighting back will get you a pat on the back. It's called Cobra, an abduction prevention course for kids.
It's all about learning law enforcement principles and confidence and giving children adrenalised situations so they can actually experience what could happen, but in a safe environment.
From random attacks to attempted kidnappings to teach children how to protect themselves.
Stop! You're not my dad! Let go of me!
We've got very young kids, we've got slightly older children, but they're all being challenged constantly.
some of them as young as 4.
As long as you know and it's in the back of your head of what to do at all times, you should be okay.
After the kidnapping of Cleo Smith and with the William Tyrrell case back in the spotlight, psychologists say it's important to talk to children about their safety.
Each child and adolescent is going to be different, and it's really about following your child's lead and providing the level of information that they're looking for.
We can teach it in a way that makes them go, well, now we've got an avenue where we can discuss it at home.
They get the right cues, the right things to say, and I guess I learn a lot from it as well.
To find out more, head to our Facebook page. Georgia Terry, 7 News.
Lamb could replace lobster as the most expensive food on your table this Christmas. Next, get ready for summer seafood bargains. Everything you need to know. Also, NBA champion Andrew Bogut's rapid exit from Beaumaris. And another reason to lock in your morning coffee. Basketball star Andrew Bogut has sold his Beaumaris property in just a couple of days after a long-running council fight. The sale price hasn't been disclosed, but it had a price guide of between $11 and $12 million. Andrew Bogut put the property on the market after a public stoush with the Bayside Council over plans for a redevelopment. Time now to check the markets, and the ASX 200 finished lower for the day, down by 50 points. Energy and materials stocks weighed on the market with sell-offs in both. Rio Tinto shares were down by $2 and $1 Australian dollar is buying under 73.5 US cents. Google has announced a $1 billion investment in Australia, funding digital infrastructure, a research hub and new partnerships. The first is a multi-million-dollar tie-up with the CSIRO to look at clean energy solutions and natural hazard management.
Google's investment in Australian science will supercharge this emerging innovation ecosystem, which is passionate and world-class.
The initial commitment is for 5 years. Indigenous designers have starred on day 2 of Melbourne Fashion Week. Still to come tonight, all the highlights as First Nations fashion takes centre stage. It'll be cheaper than normal to feast on luxury seafood this festive season. China's ban on Australian imports will send local rock lobster prices plummeting to a record low price.
They're described as the Rolls-Royce of seafood.
It's a really succulent, sweet meat.
If you weren't prepared to pay premium prices for Victorian rock lobster before, now's the time to indulge.
At the moment, we're selling them anywhere between $89 to $95 a kilo, and all different sizes.
It was $140 a kilo 2 years ago. Soon, it could be half that.
It's looking like crayfish are going to be affordable for Australians for most of the season.
The luxury seafood could spike slightly as demand increases at Christmas, but could still be a cheaper option than some red meat.
For cattle and for sheep, or for beef and lamb, certainly we're seeing issues in relation to supply.
The record low prices are due to China's decision last year to ban Australian rock lobster imports. Before the ban, Australia sent more than 90% of its annual catch overseas. To support local fishers, buy lobster caught as close to home as possible.
If you live in Melbourne, San Remo, on the other side of Polo Bay, if you're in the east of the states, Lakes Entrance.
Just ask your local fishmonger. Melina Saris, 7 News.
Drinking coffee or tea could slash your risk of dementia. A study's found people who drink 4 to 6 cups every day experience the lowest incidence of not just dementia but also stroke. While each drink has its own benefits, the greatest impact came from drinking both beverages. Not at the same time. Tim Watson is next with Sport, and Tim, Ricky Ponting has flagged the prospect of an Ashes bolter for the first test.
Mitch, the former captain, says the time's right for a World Cup hero. That's next. Plus, Michael Clark's bold prediction on the future of Justin Langer as the Aussies return home. The Gold Coast Suns, hit by a COVID curveball, were live for the latest. An exclusive look at the private training session as draft hopefuls mingle with AFL stars, and Melbourne's Oscar Piastri hits the big time in world motorsport. Ricky Ponting has added weight to a chorus of support for Mitch Marsh to be recalled to the Test side. The Aussies made a unique return after their T20 World Cup win, as one of the sport's biggest names predicts a bombshell announcement.
Hardly a hero's welcome home. Australia's triumphant T20 side arrived home to COVID officers and an empty Brisbane airport. Our Test stars headed straight into quarantine ahead of the Ashes.
They might still be partying a little bit, I reckon, up there in Brisbane on the Gold Coast.
Justin Langer has arguably the most to celebrate. His tenure as coach was on the brink, but a more relaxed Langer has loosened his highly strung grip on the Aussie setup with immediate success.
I know Justin's had to make some changes, and I've spoken to him about some of the changes he's made, and I've spoken to some of the players actually about the environment having been a little bit different.
Langer's contract runs out at the end of the summer. Michael Clark believes he'll ride off into the sunset if we retain the urn.
He wanted Australia to be the best team in the world. He wanted us to play a brand of cricket that he's proud of. Knowing Lang, he won't coach for the wrong reasons. If he thinks his job's done, then I think he'll walk away.
Mitch Marsh's stocks are also at an all-time high. He's now in the frame for a Test return.
It's as good a time as ever now. You know, what I've seen the last few weeks, what I'm hearing from the Australian camp, is that his batting's been on another level, albeit T20 cricket. He's batting as well as ever, so the time might be right again for Mitchell Marsh to come back into that team.
The Aussie squad for the first Ashes Test set to be announced in the coming days.
Their Test cricket has been a little bit up and down, I think it's fair to say, the last 3 or 4 years. But they've got a great opportunity against what you would say is probably not England's strongest ever side. Certainly their batting lineups probably doesn't look as strong as some other teams that have been here in the past.
Andrew McCormack, 7 News.
Levi Casbolt's football lifeline could be compromised as he holds out for a vaccine. Chief football reporter Tom Brown has tonight's developments. And Tom, Casbolt is treading a fine line.
He is, Tim. Levi Casbolt is waiting for the Novavax vaccine. Now, sources close to Casbolt assure me tonight he will take whatever vaccine he has to by the AFL's due date. The same source assuring me this won't compromise his move. Casbolt praising Liam Jones overnight online in the wake of Jones's decision to quit football.
There's not any specific date, but we're very clear that we won't take a player onto the list if they don't intend to be vaccinated.
Now, in the wake of the Hugh Greenwood shock, one industry source has suggested an inquiry into the Suns, who Gary Lyon says have embarrassed themselves. Greenwood's 29, the club explaining their priority clearly is retaining the young stars with a tight cap.
It's a significant challenge that we face, a multi-year challenge, to make sure that we keep this list of young players together. And that will mean that we get to every year and we will have to make some tough decisions.
Another prominent list source telling me today no more draft concessions for the Gold Coast. The Suns have recently lost Hugh Greenwood, Jack Martin and Jared Lyons for a net draft return of 0 draft picks. And Tim, there'll be interesting scenes on Monday. Players returning from training must perform a rapid test every day in their car for 15 minutes before going into the clubs. It will be cumbersome but necessary.
Thanks, Tom. Draft hopefuls are joining forces with some modern-day stars as their footy dreams inch closer to reality. The countdown to draft night is on, with the best youngsters forced to make up for lost time.
All ears receiving last-minute tips. These draft prospects could soon call their idols teammates.
It was good to learn off them and take a few things from it. So yeah, it was a really good experience to have a bit of a training session with them.
Just asking them, I guess, what the footy system's all about, what you should, do's and don'ts are going in.
8 days out from the biggest night of their lives, top talent coming together with Hemisphere management players for a session led by AFL assistant Cameron Bruce.
The gym work they probably do, back when I was there, probably didn't do it to the level that they do now, and obviously you can see that some of the boys are pretty damn big.
With recruiters including Hawk-turned-Saint Jared Ruffhead watching on, final preparations will be more important than ever after a 6-month COVID delay.
It's been a long time since we played a game, so it's been a bit tough, but yeah, I've got a program that I do week in, week out.
I've got myself a running coach, so I do running with him 2-3 times a week, and go to the gym regularly, so yeah, just trying to keep fit that way.
Dan Butler, a Movember ambassador, seeing firsthand as he prepares to welcome brother Sam into the top flight.
We do a lot of training together in the off season, and yeah, I hope that he's kind of learnt from me what kind of hard work takes.
And as for working out where they might land,
You definitely look into a little bit, but yeah, just trying to, as I said, just take it day in, day out, and then whatever happens on draft night happens.
Mitch Cleary, 7 News.
Australia has a new rising star on the Formula One circuit, with Melbourne's Oscar Piastri signing a lucrative contract. He'll join Alpine as their reserve driver, following in the footsteps of Daniel Ricciardo.
Life in the fast lane is about to get even quicker for Oscar Piastri.
It's definitely one step towards the dream.
The Melburnian has caught the eye of Formula One team Alpine and will now be the backup driver. It's an incredible rise through the ranks for the 20-year-old. In 2019, he won the Formula Renault Series. Last year was crowned Formula 3 champion. Now, in his rookie season, he's on the cusp of claiming the Formula 2 title.
Being more involved with an F1 team at the Melbourne Grand Prix is going to be pretty special.
It's a similar path to stardom Daniel Ricciardo took, and even has Mark Webber in his corner.
My aim is obviously not to stop at reserve driver, it's to keep going and get a race seat, and I'm aiming to get a race seat for 2023.
He's even been in the hot seat just a few weeks ago, having a test drive in Alpine's F1 car. He'll now live in the UK and attend every race with the team, starting this weekend in Qatar.
So I have 23 weekends to immerse myself in the world of F1.
Tim Hipsley, 7 News.
We wish him all the best at sport, Mitch.
We do indeed. Thank you, Tim. Jane is next with the forecast, and Jane, it's finally warming up.
Mitch, it is about time. Tomorrow looks pleasant. Thursday is even warm. I'll have the full details next.
Hello, tonight on the latest from 7 News, closing in on a William Tyrrell breakthrough, every development as more twists emerge. The investigative journalist who knows the case inside and out shares her insights. Major protests erupting in Victorian Parliament, we're there tonight, and an incredible discovery from ancient Egypt. Hope you can join me. The latest from 7 News tonight.
Hello again. There is a lot of cloud stuck over us, but at least the wind isn't bitter anymore. That wind is lighter too, enough for that cloud to be at ground level at first. This was Emerald in thick fog this morning. After a low of 8, we rose to 15 in the city, a bit better than yesterday's 13.8. But this is our 5th day in a row of 15 or less. The cloud stretches across southern Victoria, but only just makes it up into the north. Horsham, Bendigo, Shepparton, otherwise quite sunny but cool up there. To see what's driving our weather, a look at the high pressure system. Today, it's still back to our west, so we're still cold and grey. But watch it cross us overnight and then move out to our east by the end of tomorrow. That there means things are looking up. Conditions turn pleasant tomorrow, then northerly winds make temperatures jump up on Thursday. But the next weather system is not far away. A weak low passes through on Thursday into Friday. It's not deep or moisture laden, so there's no heavy rain. In Melbourne, there's a bit of wet weather later on Thursday into Friday morning, so it's actually dry for much of Thursday and Friday. The next system looks bigger for us. It develops on Saturday. It's at full strength on Sunday. This one is moisture laden. It's a deeper low. This is our next significant rain. Have a look at the purple. In Melbourne, it slowly builds later on Saturday. Then we have a wet Sunday. Around the nation tomorrow, that high moving to the east coast brings a little wet weather to Brisbane, but Sydney and Canberra are dry. Hobart will be having its warmest day of the week, while Adelaide jumps up to 26. Perth remains warm. To Victoria, there is the risk of frost inland at first. Yes, it is mid-November. Otherwise, areas of cloud in the south, they're clearing out. Then just some wispy high cloud overhead. Wispy meaning lots of sun shining through, making it feel a bit warmer. Closer in, there's still a large air of cloud hanging over us during the morning. You can see it in through there. But the afternoon looks nicer with lots of sunshine. With light winds, it'll feel a bit more like mid-November. The UV index is reaching very high. The morning still feels cool under the cloud, but the afternoon looks pleasant. We have increasing sunshine. We'll rise up to 20 degrees. To the 8-day outlook, Thursday is the warmest day of this outlook. We're jumping up to 25. Now, it is dry for much of the time, but there is the chance of showers and thunderstorms in the late afternoon and evening. Not all will see one. As we go into Friday, it is 18. The showers clear out during the morning. It should be dry on Friday night, but take a jacket down to 10 by Saturday morning. Saturday dry for much of the day, just a little bit of wet weather here. The next main wet day is Sunday, and that's when we get a steady rain, 10 to 40 millimetres across Melbourne. Then a wishy-washy pattern next week, just the odd shower here and there. So we're rising up to 20. A pleasant afternoon tomorrow. Clouds should clear. We'll have lots of sunshine, Mitch.
We'll take anything in the 20s at the moment, won't we?
I think we will. So tomorrow, Thursday, that's when we get our 25. That'll be good.
That sounds very nice. Thank you, Jane. Indigenous designers have headlined day 2 of Melbourne Fashion Week. It's just one way the festival is changing its style for 2021.
A ceremonial smoking, then lights, camera, action. As Indigenous fashion took centre stage on the runway.
It's a fantastic way through fashion for us to celebrate our culture.
It's the first time an All First Nations lineup has headlined at Melbourne Fashion Week.
It's just simply amazing. We've been working on this project for just about over a year.
The show featuring garments all uniquely woven using the fabric of our First Nation story.
We collaborate with Aboriginal women with all the artworks, and every piece does have a story.
Taking to the runway, X Factor winner and one-time Eurovision contestant Isaiah Firebrace. Despite performing on a world stage, not even he was immune to some pre-show jitters.
I still get nervous, and this is actually only my second runway. I am a Yorta Yorta man and a Gunditjmara man. As First Nations people, we tell our story through culture, through art, and if we can merge that into fashion, it's awesome.
And what are you looking forward to most about walking the runway?
Just like, I don't know. Like,
a proud moment?
It would be a proud moment, just being a part of what today stands for.
A day when fashion becomes more than just the clothes that we wear. Sonia Marinelli, 7 News.
Now here's what's on. The way it is this Tuesday, the 16th of November. Thanks for your company. For now, from the 7 News team, good night.